Good
Thank you
day,
for joining us
everybody.
on Poets Building Bridges, Season 3, November 9th, 2024. My name is George Wallace, writer in residence at the Walt Whitman Birthplace. I'd like to introduce Robert Savino from the Board of Directors of the Walt Whitman Birthplace and a poet, fine poet in his own right, to welcome you.
So, welcome, everybody. I greet you today on behalf of the Executive Director of the Walt Whitman Birthplace and the Walt Whitman Birthplace Association Board of Trustees, and welcome you to the third series of Poets Building Bridges, which is produced by Poetrybay Productions for the Walt Whitman Birthplace and led by George Wallace, who's been the poet in residence for the birthplace for 14 years now. The birthplace offers events throughout the year, and I encourage you to check out the website at www.waltwhitman.org. I thank you all for coming here today. I thank our technical director over at the birthplace with the little icon of Walt. And as always, I thank George for everything he does to contribute to the birthplace and to poetry throughout our community and worldwide. And now I'll turn it over to George Wallace.
Thank you, Robert. Robert is formerly a Suffolk County Poet Laureate and a mainstay of poetry in the region. So thanks for all you do, Robert. And thank you, yes, to the Walt Whitman Birthplace for being the Uber host of this program and engineering it today. We'll start with our first of three groups that we're going to be hearing from today, a group of poets associated or linked through their relationship to the village of Northport, Long Island, New York, home to Jack Kerouac and Antoine de Saint-Exupéry at different parts of his life, a village of long literary heritage. And the person who's going to be organizing this group today is Bruce Johnson, a person I've been affiliated with and collaborated with the longest of anybody here on Long Island, having gone back to 1988, 89, when first started doing readings at places like the Paris Cafe and starting up the barn, the Poetry Barn in Huntington. Dear friend and fine poet, please welcome Bruce Johnson.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Robert, and thank you to the Walt Whitman Birthplace. We have four really fine poets today. The first one I'm going to introduce to you is Emily Sue Sloane, and she's an award-winning poet whose work has appeared in many print and online journals and anthologies, as well as on WNYC's Morning Edition. She's the author of a full-length collection, We Are Beach Glass from 2022, and a chapbook, Disconnects and Other Broken Threads. That's published by the Poetry Box, March 2024. She lives in Huntington Station currently with her wife, singer-songwriter Linda Sussman, who I believe is listening in today. And okay, so Emily Sue, take it away.
Well, thank you so much, George and Bruce, and everyone for being here, for helping to build bridges. We sure need them now more than ever. I'd venture to guess many of us are struggling to find our footing after this week. So I write a lot about wonder and worry. You'll hear a little of each in these poems. I'll start with Reality's Prism. I thought I understood human behavior well enough, having lived among people all my life. But I can't predict actions, am blindsided by reactions, am on guard, always listening for cracks in pond ice, watching for deer to dart into the road. Same town, same classrooms, shared memories of landmarks, public parks, favorite hangout spots. Yet, when we peer into reality's prism, the light splinters, colors clash. Bridges collapse into racing rivers that carve canyons deeper and wider, churning up minerals they'll deposit like seeds in delta silt, payment for passage into infinity. It's writers I rely on to show me the way. Thanks. Time to leave. How did they know it was time to leave, or for that matter, where to go? Questions chase dreams deeper into darkness where time grows weary. In better days, I joked about triple jeopardy, female, gay, Jewish. Having come of age in a valley between oppression and freedom, I believed that numbers burned into arms had faded enough, foreign accents blended enough, women proved themselves capable enough, love between two people brilliant enough to dispel ancient lies. How naive to think our roots tethered us to this land, our scars would staunch all bleeding. But now I am asking, how did they know? Between the hours of darkness. After the clocks retrieve our lost hour, day dawns early, bringing apologies that it won't be staying long. Tables and chairs next door already buttoned up for winter. Time to turn off spigots, cut frost-blackened ferns to ground, stow away flower pots and garden art. I'll spare the petunias still purpling, wait for the tomato plant, leggy and naked with so few leaves, to drop the last of its creations, green and dusty orange, split open, too bitter even for the squirrels. Now I'll read from Disconnects and Other Broken Threads. Hollow-eyed hunger. The shopping list on the fridge gets longer as portions shrink and hollow-eyed hunger deepens. If tears and worry could be cashed in like chips at a casino, there'd be no waiting in line at the food bank, no asking over and over how all those hours at a job or two don't add up. And this one is who you are. To live is to become who you are if you're lucky and you're brave. Much easier to become who they want you to be. Wear the uniform, say the prayers, marry, have kids. So much work to peer inward, trace the origin of beliefs and behaviors, carryovers from youth. Do unto others. Don't point at people or ask too many questions. Don't talk about private family matters. Never pair checks and stripes. But what if you like to wear unmatched socks? Have doubts about God and miracles? Know in your heart that opposites don't always attract, or that your body doesn't match who you really are. Thank you. This one's called An Invisible Cloak. An invisible cloak shields us on the journey through time's traveling show. Its power lies in the tightness of the weave. Every stitch a name, a place, a lingering scent or sound. Fabric enfolds and reshapes memories, extracts the sting, fluffs up the pillows to let sleep in. It asks only that we loosen our grip, let go of striving, save our tears for the parched earth's ladle. And I'll close with two, thank you, from my beach glass book. This one's from my grandmother. It's called The Baker. Nanny's cigarette hung from her lips, a lengthening ash that never seemed to fall as she sifted and sprinkled flour, folded in the butter, beat the eggs, kneaded and rolled the dough to a consistency her hands recognized as right for blintzes, cakes, and pies, pinched and prodded into pockets, stuffed with farmer cheese and fruit, or layered and dressed for the occasion with icing or whipped cream. One eye closed against the curling smoke, she unfurled her stories, told in cadences practiced and perfected over a lifetime. The details have now faded, like the recipes my mother wrote down. A pinch of this, a dollop of that, left out. The tears, the laughter, the tobacco ash. Thanks. And this one is the title poem for my book, We Are Beach Glass. Damaged and dinky, I still love it, the singer said of the old guitar he'd just bought. Maybe he had a soft spot for things showing their age after his, maybe 7 decades of living. I don't know him well enough to suppose. But no one comes through unscathed. We are shards of beach glass, sharp edges worn smooth by the tides, sheen muted by sun and sand. Fragments of the mosaic, waiting to be noticed, caressed, tucked into a pocket for safekeeping. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily Sue. I love your sense of music, the music of details.
Why, thank you, Bruce.
Our next poet is Bill Graeser. He lives in Iowa now, but he's native to Long Island and formerly lived in Northport, right on Bread and Cheese Hollow Road, as I recall. Hold on, here we go. He's been published in the North American Review, Telepoem Both, Lyrical Iowa, and Long Island Quarterly. He's the winner of Iowa Poetry Association's 2012 Norman Thomas Memorial Award and is the author of 2 books of poetry, Fire in a Nutshell and Rushing is a Waste of Time. And they're available at Lulu Press. Bill Graeser.
Thank you, Bruce. And thanks to the power of Zoom, we from different places we have wandered, we can sit together as if on Bread and Cheese Hollow Road and share poetry. So I assume you can hear me okay. And I will proceed. I'd like to start with 2 poems that I wrote on Long Island. The first is for my father, who had passed away, and he loved to sail on the Great South Bay, where there is shallow water and you have to watch out for the sandbars. So the poem is called, and he was buried in a cemetery, but this poem says it differently. It says, Where Father Rests. Waves are the flowers on my father's grave. Sails inscribed with wind the headstone. He is not beneath the ground, in some shadeless row, neglecting conversation with his neighbor. He is where the tide rushes and lulls, and sandbars cling to keels and laugh. In my Graeser experience sailing as first mate on my father's boat, we never did get stuck on a sandbar, but we bumped over them many a time. I was driving through Huntington on 25A, and there was this white church that you would know, and a black hearse in front of it. And I was so like, the hearse was totally black, the church was totally white. But the poem, I actually pulled over and got out and looked at it. But the poem I got out of it focused on the hearse. It's called The Black Hearse. The black hearse would gladly give its black away for the yellow of the taxi, the red of the fire engine, the ringing bell of the ice cream truck, and would be relieved to take a load of lumber on its back, like the old Mack flatbed or diesel of 18 wheels. But how then would the dead get to where they're going? Flowers tender as hearts by their side. No, the hearse must be as it is, black as the blackest fur of the blackest cat, a car without a radio, purposeful as a shovel in the one thing it knows to do. Thank you. Now I'm going to try exit full screen. Is there a way that I share screen? I used to see that at the bottom.
Jennifer, do you know?
So I was going to let you see the poems I was going to read, but I'll just go through them.
I don't think we can get the attention of the engineer, so go ahead and do it without it, Bill.
Yeah. So this is a new poem, and it's called Dancing with Annie DeFranco. And when I think of New York, I think of Annie DeFranco, I think of Richie Havens. Dancing with Annie DeFranco. I first saw her in concert with Richie Havens and danced with them both. Though leaning close, I kissed her bald head, but not his. While Richie is a black Buddha, Annie is more a leprechaun, dressed in leather, her eyes shining like pots of gold. Among many, she's a hero, for telling the big record labels where to go, as when they didn't sign her, she started her own Righteous Babe Records. And when she sold many, they said, here's your record deal. That's when she told them when to go, where to go. No longer shaving her head, she at times has dyed her hair blonde or pink. But it's not a look, it's the lyrics, a rainbow voice, her from the gut guitar, that even the unleprechaun-like leap up and dance. I may have time for just one more. And this is a prose poem, but it should be allowed at the party, and it won't take long. A horse named Posse. Knowing that no one in such an unheroic town would come when he needed to form a posse. Rather than ride alone, the sheriff named his horse Posse. When the bank was robbed, as in the West banks were, the sheriff and his posse, having followed the outlaw tracks all day, slept beneath the silver badges of the stars. Come morning, a pot of coffee was made, enough for them both to drink, a black bitterness made sweet with a teaspoon of sugar. Perhaps the coffee was why they always caught up with the outlaw and brought him back according to the custom of the day, dead or alive. This happened so often, the town stopped betting if it was the sheriff that would end up dead or alive. But luck does not last forever. A day came when a horse named Posse returned, with the sheriff still in the saddle, a band of bullets in his chest. They buried him in the cemetery beside farmers who died of working too hard with too little to eat. Beside farmers' wives who died of working too hard with too little to cook. Beside women who, though visited in rooms above the saloon by every man in town, died of loneliness. Beside a bartender who died of thirst, a cook who died of food poisoning, the only doctor in town who died on the operating table, a blacksmith who died of a mule kick in the head, a newspaper man who died of paper cuts, and the richest man in these parts, who with a pearl-handled dagger opened his wrists, that the river of his blood flowed onto the floor. As they were sure the sheriff would have wanted, a horse named Posse was set free to graze upon thistle, wildflower that grew among gravestones, around the church, between the saloon, the bank, and the blacksmith shop. And every morning the town takes turns bringing him a cup of coffee, a black bitterness made sweet with a teaspoon of sugar. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. I share your love of the work of Ani DeFranco,
Oh, very good.
and I always enjoy it. You have a deep sense of observation and you understand things. Our next poet is Linda Trott Dickman. She's an award-winning poet, author of 5 chapbooks and a poetry prompt book for children. Her work has been featured locally and internationally in print and online anthologies. She's the coordinator of poetry for the Northport Arts Coalition. Linda works with poets of all ages at the Walt Whitman Birthplace Association and local museums, and leads a poetry workshop at Samantha's Little Bit of Heaven coffee house. She was chosen New York State Woman of Distinction in 2023, and she has a wonderful enthusiasm for poetry and people. Linda Dickman.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I have to say, I have never heard Bill before, and now I want to hear him again. Bill, what beautiful words and what beautiful American thoughts and incredible poetry. Thank you so much. Emmy, love you to death because I can't believe how many times we write about the same thing. And George, I remember you from the newspaper back at Pulaski Road School. So I'm really happy to be among you all. And Bruce is a regular attender at Poets in Port. So now that I've taken up at least a minute, I will now read. This is from my latest book called The Librarian, A Life in Picture Books. And they're based on picture books that have impacted my life. So the first one is from a picture book called Unspoken about the Underground Railroad. For Henry Cole, for those who escaped, for those who helped them. I know you could hear me breathing in the sheaves. I saw the quilt, but still I was scared, too scared to even breathe until I got into the corn stalks. That's when you came in. Your kitty knew. She could smell me in among the tall stalks. You ran, I know you were scared too. You heard the soldiers, but not too scared to care. Not too scared to wrap muffins, still warm from the oven, in that checkered napkin. Every crumb a feast. Cornbread, pie, potato, chicken wing. For 5 days you found a way, even when that soldier came. That's why I made the doll. A little bit of warmth in the napkin, a little bit of smile in the cornstalk, the smell of freedom, as close as inhale, as sweet as the Big Dipper. Thank you. This one is called Shh. And those of you who do not know, I was a school librarian for 40 years. And that word rarely passed my lips, but when I say it, it happens. But this is what I got in trouble for 40 years, and I'm proud of it. Shh. The library's a quiet place. Don't you know you can't sing and dance? Walking on tables is strictly forbidden. Dress-up clothes? A hat rack? You must be crazy. Shh. Oh, what? You're who? The librarian? Oops. Wish I could tell you the story, but I can't. This one is for my husband. It's called Katie and the Big Snow, after Katie and the Big Snow by Virginia Lee Burton. Katie loved her work. The highway department of Geopolis kept her busy summer and winter, bulldozing, plowing. 55 horses pulling together, working together. Traffic flowed. The harder and tougher the job, the happier Katie worked. She was their pride and joy. Winter kept her bound for all her power until the big snow. One by one, businesses, service roads closed. Everything stopped but Katie. Katie dug through the thickness, leading police, postmaster, railway, communications, the roads east, north, west, and south, all the way to the airport. The city was unveiled thanks to Katie. Just like you broke through the snowdrifts to find me. Thank you, honey. Okay, this one is called The Storytelling Princess, after the book by the same name by Rafe Martin. Also for my husband, for the Cavalier teacher. Dad was always telling me to go to the Presbyterian church, the one in Northport. I should meet a professional man. I would have none of it. I had to do it on my own. I wrote out a prayer, a list of things that were absolutely a priority. I prayed on it, literally, then spent too many years trying to help God fill the list. He was set up with a nice redheaded girl whose parents were ministers, whose parents had braved the West in wagons or buckboards or something. He asked if he could bring a friend along on the sailing date. No one was prepared for me. With my one-strapped, polka-dotted bathing suit, my Mulligan Stew faith journey, my Catholic roots, my previous marriage. We played out our story at Radio Shack with Tom and Jane Sawyer taking classic notes. He was the Cavalier teacher. I was the matronly student who married the Cavalier teacher at the Presbyterian Church in Northport. And I think if I could read one more, it's called Swan Song for all the enchanted swans. This is based on the fairy tale. For those who weave. She looked around the darkened room, the small book company box, self-lid closing uncomfortably on sleeves of completed plans. She held the book created just for her as if the authors were in her embrace. All that traveling across the realm, surviving wicked witches, often in silence for the sake of the children. Weaving her tales like flaxen coverings, taking the stings with eyes toward heaven. One last thing remained, the partially finished shirt in the shadow box. She kept her silence, weaving until they were all free. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. You are a wonderful storyteller. And the other thing I love about you is you and David's relationship. You're perfect for each other. Okay, our last poet is Phil Asaph. And he was born and grew up in Huntington. And he's a transplant to the Ithaca, New York area, where he continues to write prolifically and where he's a meditation teacher. Phil is happy to teach his meditation method to anyone who wants to learn. If you don't have the money, he'll teach it to you for free. Phil has published poems in the Long Island Quarterly, Tampa Review, and Poetry Magazine. And he's working on a really fine book that instructs us how to simply get into deep meditation. It's a great book. I hope he finishes it soon. Take it away, Phil.
Thanks, Bruce. Hello, old friends and new friends. I'm so glad to be here. I have 3 poems I'm going to read. And I've been working on that meditation book every day for the last 6.5 years. And this is the first time this morning that I edited any poetry at all. And it got me so excited because this is the love of my life. So the first one is called Who Loves You, Baby? For burnouts in the Carter years, heaven was a concrete apron behind Danny Martin's garage, where we'd sit on ripped-out car seats, bubbling bongs and chugging buds and shouting at the stars, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Large were all our feelings then. And when we said, party hardy, the part that was implicit was the part we meant. For tomorrow, we die. The Soviet Union, we were sure, would be shooting off A-bombs like bottle rockets soon, or we'd be shooting ours at them. Either way, everybody knew nobody was going to live past 25, and nobody wanted to. The 60s were shot. The revolutions were dead. They'd skidded into ditches all over the place. For us, the only two true things that could be said were good weed rules and disco sucks. Getting girls like Wendy out of their tube tops was as far as our stoned dreams went. But those nights, I swear to God, were meaningful as hell, and Danny's father, for a father, was cool. Flattening his nose against the screen door, he'd ask, "Are you kids smoking pot out there?" Which made us sing in unison, "No, Mr. Martin." And that was the end of adult supervision. Waltzing a whiskey sour back to his chair, he'd return to his love affair with television, to Kojak, sucking that lollipop and saying, "Who loves you, baby?" Mr. Martin loved how Kojak said that and often gave us his rendition. Thank you. Chilled blueberries. When you followed me back to my apartment and dropped your clothes on my floor, I wanted to be more than one more of your lovers. I wanted to go into the dreams with you, make you laugh in the morning, make you wait for breakfast, take you to the park at the heart of town, to see the goldfish in the pond, the children on the playground, and show you how close God is to us. I was going to crush the buds of lavender in my hands for you, hold them under your nose, and tell you to breathe. When I found the sea and rode your waves, when I pulled your hair and pounded you, I wanted to be more than an evening's ecstasy, more than fun in the form of a man. I was hoping to eat a bowl of blueberries with you, read you my favorite scriptures, share the passages that have shaped my life and made me the person you picked last night. I wanted you to sit on the couch with me and close your eyes and listen to the whole sixth symphony. And I wanted to hear you sing. I believed you understood this when I licked the white scar under your chin, but you did not enter any of my mansions. You picked up your clothes and put them on again, and left me drenched with your scent, an instrument echoing with your sensations. Thank you. The last is called Cake for Breakfast. Maples are my favorite trees, and I've had an odd relationship with maples on Long Island since I was 10 years old. The white light, as it shines on the top of maple trees on Long Island, is different from the light that shines on the leaves of all other trees. Cake for breakfast. When the maple branches sway and the shade dances over the chipped brick steps where I sit, scratching my hairy chest and eating a handful of carrot cake, while scrambling ants in search of crumbs zigzag across the cool blue slates, and one, bright black and tickling, climbs indifferently over the white mountain of my big toe, just when someone calls, "Hello," and I see my neighbor buzzing steadily toward church in her wheelchair. I wonder if paradise is a place to be reached, or what we wholly love, right here, where the maple branches sway and the shade dances. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Phil. You have a wonderful way with words and the humor that really infuses all of your work and your sense of our culture. These are some of the things I love about your poetry. And I also love that you're my most valued advisor for editing. Anyway, I look forward to hearing everyone else, and I'm going to turn it back over to George.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. Pulled together some very fine people. Good to hear some people that I haven't seen around here for a while in the Huntington Northport area. Welcome back. Our second group of poets, South Asian diaspora poets, led by Pramila Venkateswaran, who we'll know locally on Long Island as a former poet laureate of Suffolk County, the current president of NOW, National Organization of Women in Suffolk County. And in the world of South Asian poetry, she's known for her work as co-director of the Matwala South Asian Diaspora Poetry Festival. She's had a couple books, 20 years now, publishing books, going back to Thurtha from Uganda Press back in 2002. A couple from Finishing Line Press, and I know she's done a lot of work in exploring the poetry, the Dalit poetry, D-A-L-I-T poetry, and we can expect some innovative work from her, representing that genre of poetry in the future. But she's here today with a fine group of poets, and not for the first time. So we're happy to welcome back Pramila Venkateswaran.
Thank you so much, George. It's a pleasure to be here. And I thank Robert Savino and the Walt Whitman Birthplace Association. It's just wonderful that we are doing this program now for the third year in a row, building bridges. And that's exactly what we need to continue doing. I'm really happy to bring a stellar group of South Asian American poets to you today. And I'd like to begin this session with this little poem called Innocence. A child bends down to pick up what you lost, smooths down the fabric, star after star, dust on her fingers, and skips up to her mother's call in the dusk, the cosmos in her pocket. So today we have three fabulous poets. The first person whom I'll be introducing is Zilka Joseph. She has authored 5 collections of poetry, her most recent being Sweet Melida, Memories of a Bene Israel Woman. She has won several awards. Her books were nominated for PEN, ABA, and Pushcart Awards. And she was born and brought up in India, and she now lives in Michigan, and where she is a writing coach, a manuscript advisor, and a freelance editor. So welcome, Zilka Joseph.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Pramila. Thank you, George, and everybody who was involved in this wonderful program. So wonderful to be part of this gathering. And thank you, Pramila, for having me as part of your group. The poems I'm going to read today are from my previous book, and it's called From In Our Beautiful Bones. This book has a lot more poems that are concerned with oppression and freedom and the fight for peace and justice. My new book, which is my 6th collection, is Sweet Melida, the one that Pramila mentioned, and that book is mainly about the Ben Israel Jewish community in India, an ancient community, and it also has poems about my move to the US, as well as stories of my childhood. But in Our Beautiful Bones, it is going to be today. The first poem I'm going to read to you is called Freedom Song with Ginsberg, Dylan, and Marley. And as the title suggests, we are going to have reflections of lines from both Allen Ginsberg, Bob Dylan, and Bob Marley. The epigraph is, "It occurs to me that I am America." Ginsberg, can you rant to us? Dylan, can you moan to us? Marley, can you wail to us? America, you are beautiful. Sometimes you have the biggest heart I know. Sometimes you have the smallest heart I know. But please, get out of the way if you can't lend a hand, for the times they are a-changing. O prophets of the people, will the walls keep marching on? Are we disposable animals? Come, you masters of war that build all the guns, it's your own children you riddle with bullets, fling upon the rubbish heap of history. I say nothing about my prisons, nor the millions of underprivileged who live in my flower pots under the light of 500 suns. The giants of the castle have no mercy. They grind our bones to make their bread. Eat our little children. Fee, fi, fo, fum, fee, fi, fo, fum. O prophets and militias of Mammon, and Machiavelli and Monsanto, even Jesus would never forgive what you do. Oh, let us sing our true, true songs, our songs of freedom. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Oh, emancipate yourself, emancipate yourself. None but ourselves can free our minds. Thank you. Thank you. The next poem I'm going to read excerpts from this poem. It's a long poem. It's a poem that I would perhaps call a collage poem. It's full of different kinds of fragments, and they are taken from world and colonial history, myths, literature, popular music, religious songs, folk fairy tales, and stories. So I'm just going to read the last few sections from this poem, and then I'll end with my last poem. With our shattered faces, we have roamed the wilderness. I'm sorry, the name of the poem is Whose Voices Were Heard. With our shattered faces, we have roamed the wilderness. We have a dream, so let us never forget our roots, our passage. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, oh, my people, I shall go. Let my people go. We die soon, we die too soon, we who only stand and wait. Go then to Lourdes, to Luxor, to Lethe, to Delphi, to Hardwar, to Lumbini, to Assisi, to Brindavan, to Sedona, whatever floats your boat. This is your ancestors' ark. Rise, rise up, singing. Still I rise, still I rise. Oh, sing in our own myriad tongues, in our own voices. Mate tikun ha-olam. The goddess dances on the head of the demon. The Madonna crushes the snake with her foot. Tam somai jatir gamai, from darkness unto light. Do you know how to make a peaceful road through human memory? We know where we're going. Yes, we know where we're from. May we move freely through the passage between lives. Can you see us dancing in the dark and in the rain, and in the moonlight and the firelight and the lamplight, dancing in the sun, in our own beautiful skin, in our own beautiful bone? And I'm going to end with the last poem of my book, In Our Beautiful Bones, and it's called Prayer. This book has a lot of references to many of the slain souls, particularly Black people in this country, but there are references to oppression globally. So this sort of evokes a lot of those things, but it's mainly a poem to celebrate and to honor the fallen, and it's called Prayer. Oh, dearly beloved, you walked upon this beautiful earth. We honor your footprints, your life, your last breath. We who never knew, we always knew you. We will cover your body with flowers as we say your name, your holy name. We will light the match to light the branch that will set your funeral pyre on fire. Who will shave their heads in mourning, light a diya, and sail a leaf boat on the river Ganga? Om Shanti. I've taken extracts from various religious ceremonies. Who will carry you to the great tower of silence on your shoulders, to the graveyard of the worshippers of fire? Offer your body to the sacred birds. Give your body back to nature. We will say, Hail Mary, full of grace for you, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. A soul has risen. Let perpetual light shine upon you. We will dig a grave for you, bow to the east, say janazah for you. Oh, elevate your station among those who are guided. We will close your eyelids with loving fingers, sing Kaddish, pray, grant us peace and a happy life, light candles to remember you. We will call on the compassionate ones, ask for your heart, our hearts, to be opened, that loving kindness guide us to see beyond blindness. One day, may the bullets, knives, nooses, knees, hands of hate, war, tyranny burst into roses. May all darkness that lives among us, inside us, around us, bloom into jasmine. May pain be transformed into lilies, sweet scent lifting us all to new light. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Zilka. Your poems totally lift our hearts. And the last poem, especially, calling is a prayer to bring light and healing to our hearts, is utterly beautiful. Thank you so much. And now I'm so pleased to bring to you another wonderful poet, Megha Sood. Megha Sood is an award-winning Asian American poet, editor, and literary activist from New Jersey, so right in our neighborhood. And she has several books, most recently being My Body is Not an Apology and My Body Lives Like a Threat. And she also has a fellowship from the Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing and a 2022 mini grant from Kundima. And what is spectacular about her bio is that her project called the Medusa Project was selected as a digital payload that was sent to the moon in 2024 as part of the historical Lunar Codex project in collaboration with NASA SpaceX. So welcome, Megha Sood.
Thanks so much, Pramila, for this kind introduction. And thank you so much to Walt Whitman Birthplace Association and George Wallace for making this program happen. And it's an honor and pleasure to share this space with such distinguished voices in our community. And without taking any further time, I'm just going to read 3 of my poems. And the first one is called My Identity as a First Generation Immigrant. And these poems are part of my 4th poetry collection, which is coming up by Flower Song Press in 2025. And the name of the book is called A Language of the Wound is Love. The name of the poem is My Identity as a First Generation Immigrant. Empathy stems from the mouth of love, of hunger, of acceptance. An incessant desire to be known as a countryman in a town full of wonders. A land of opportunity as told by my toothy-grinned ancestors. I hear your wails in the thicket of the night, heat rising through my spine, leaving my walnut skin pocked with welts and blisters. Another day of spineless crime. Little difference does language make if the heart is emptied out of compassion. Protection takes a different meaning when the protector starts to devour. I curl my words as your name slips and falls off my tongue. Like a sin in this country, built on borrowed hopes and desires. Crouched and shriveled, shrinking my existence a little bit more every time. Treading narrow streets filled with slurs resting on forked tongues and bent spines, carrying silver-etched dreams of my ancestors with throat laced with parables of truth. Soft hands with sweet bay leaf fragrance, holding a sepia-tinged tattered book, carrying the love for generations. My identity, carved as a first-generation immigrant, in a land built on the callous hands of those dreamy eyes, painted with silvery dreams of kingdoms to come. The next poem is called Lullaby, an Elixir, a Tourniquet, a Panacea. And this poem was written as a response to the theme, what would a poet do when the whole world is screaming? Lullaby, an elixir, a tourniquet, a panacea. And while the world is ablaze with hurt, hunger, and greed, birthing orphans by the second, with street laced with death and dying, wailing widows running stark naked on streets, their bodies played open, eyes gazing from emptiness to nothing, facing the nakedness of this world. Children with ashen dreams lining their eyes, once filled with hope, holding the last remnant, the last definition of their home. And with hearts beat syncopating with deafening explosions, line of terror anointing the morning sky, once filled with blue kindness, and now a graveyard of unclaimed dreams, with the names of those you do not know, with a face you don't bother to recall. And when my shattered heart in this broken world, sitting on a pile of explosives, crimson hope birthing in my heaving bosom, tears marking their territory, I try feverishly to write a lullaby, a poem, an elixir, a tourniquet, a panacea, few words of solace, a morsel of hope, a plinth for their empty existence, earth for their hunger, to satiate their parched beings, to fill the soft folds of their ears with the melody of a lost lullaby, unfazed by an exploding bomb, to give them one night without nightmares, a night without the blood of their loved ones slowly seeping into the courtyard, marking violence in their wake, to put a stop to their despondent lives being turned into endless reels for all the hungry eyes of this ravenous world to feed, to put a stop once, just once. The next poem is called Trails of Kindness, and it talks about the kindness which should be a necessary gesture of acceptance in all of our human beings. Trails of kindness. I count my years as I walk past the trees lining my courtyard, counting them one by one neatly on my soft, supple fingers. The mighty oak has weathered worse and stillness sparrows. The jasmine tree, whose flower-laden shoots smiles through their fragrant arms, wave me goodbyes. Their warm presence deeply carried by the northern winds. Even with the slight opening in my kitchen window, they can make their presence felt. What more is to this life than to count joys and blessings in the crawling lines of my mint plant that is growing and spilling joys in all directions? The new tender leaves of basil twinkling and shining through the sliver of the sunlight. Warm, supple hands of my succulents holding water as kindness in their thick leaves remind me of the frail hands of my granny combing my hair and making trails of kindness, reminding me always that kindness is a necessary gesture of acceptance, like the puny sapling breaking through the crumbling earth as it finds hope and grows through pain. And I'm closing my reading with an ode to poetry, which made this program happen. Poem and its hunger. Do you ever realize how the body reclaims itself, like the dried scar from the time of birth? You only realize its presence when you see it. Hunger reeks from your soul, and like water from a mother's hair wrung after a bath, it brings out scented memories of something pure and sublime. We all enter a poem knowing its hunger and emerge stripped naked of our emotions. There is always a death standing at the end of sentence. Not every enjambment gives meaning. Some lines are meant to be left orphaned, like the day they found an old crumpled picture of my bombed city in my wallet. We all enter a poem knowing its hunger, like a knight, feverishly trying to find its salvation in the open mouth of the bloody dawn. Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megha. I was struck by how you pay attention to all the brokenness, yet we see so much light streaming through, and you allow us to appreciate the light. Thank you. And now we come to our third reader, and this is Kalpna Singh-Chitnis that I'm so happy to bring to you all the way from California. She's an Indian-American poet, writer, filmmaker, and author of 6 collections, including Love Letters to Ukraine from Uyava, and the other one is Trespassing My Ancestral Lands. She has won the National Indie Excellence Award. She was shortlisted for that in 2023. Her poems have been translated into 18 languages. Her poetry film, River of Songs, was selected to go to the moon with NASA's missions in 2023. That's quite amazing. Thank you so much for coming, Kalpna Singh-Chitnis. We are looking forward to hearing you read. Welcome, Kalpna.
Thank you, Pramila, for having me and the introduction. And I also want to thank Walt Whitman Birthplace Association for organizing this wonderful event and giving us the opportunity to come together to share our poetry. And I'm so honored to present poems from my 2 latest poetry collections. One is Trespassing My Ancestral Land. This book has the poems about my memories and roots in India. And I'm sure most of us who have migrated from other countries, and also my immigrant experiences in America. So I'll read 2 poems from here. And excuse me, I will read 2 poems from Love Letters to Ukraine from Uyava, which is dedicated to Ukraine and its defenders. And I'm also very honored to break this news at this platform that Love Letters to Ukraine from Uyava has won a state award in Ukraine called Hirihari Culture Literary Award. And this award will be presented on 17th of November. I'm so honored to have my book translated by Lieutenant Colonel of Armed Forces of Ukraine, who is also a poet and a translator, author of several books, over a dozen books. His name is Vladimir Timchuk. So I'm going to read 2 poems from Ukraine, from Love Letters to Ukraine, and 2 poems from Trespassing My Ancestral Land. So let's just start with a fun poem called On My Way to School. On my way to school is a desi bar. On my way to school is a desi bar. I often see drunken men ejected from there with loose women. One stole my uncle. My aunt spits in her face. She had a love child disgraced. On my way to school, people stand in a queue to fill water supplied from a municipal tap before it shuts off at 9. On my way to school is a banyan tree. It yawns in the morning. Monkeys and bears dance on the street and cows chew cud. On my way to school are shops selling samosas, jalebi, pakoda, and tea. Beggars sit there all day, hoping for a piece. On my way to school is a grain mill by the hill and a market. Fresh produce arrives there every morning from local farms. On my way to school are butcher shops. Animals are skinned in the open, chickens crammed into cages, and goats tethered by ropes shudder in fear, waiting for their turn. On my way to school are temples, gurdwaras, and mosques, and prayers blaring from loudspeakers for ever silent guards. On my way to school are potholes and standing water. Dogs and cobblers sit under shades, and my father buys cigarettes. On my way to school is a railway crossing. People often go there to end their life. On my way to school, what I learn isn't taught to us in school. And the second poem is called My Post Office Without a Country, after Aga Shahid Ali. Every so often, nations fall from the world map as leaves and flowers fall from a tree hit by a thunderstorm. My poetry book cannot travel to the Holy Land. Palestine isn't in the database of the United States Postal Office. I verify the address given to me by Muhammad. How could a country disappear into space? People standing in the queue look at my face. The clerk turns the screen toward me and scrolls down. The state of Palestine wasn't found. My package was returned, and as I turned, I saw someone smiling at me. Palestine exists in the twinkles of her eyes. It exists because Muhammad lives there. He tells us the stories of his land. It exists because Yasser Arafat came to my homeland in a kafia. It exists because I hear Palestine sing in Tarana of Rimbana. It exists because it burns in the eyes of Ahad Tamimi. It exists because it lives in the hearts of 5 million Philistines. I will exit the line, but tell me first how Palestine went missing. I ask Handala, I ask my friend Muhammad in Ramallah, Sartawi in Jordan, and Ronnie in Galilee. I ask Shahid Ali of the country without a post office. I ask this question to myself as I write My Post Office Without a Country. Thank you. Now, I'm going to read from Love Letters to Ukraine from Yuava. The title of the poem is A Warrior Wants to Read Love Poems. Why would a warrior like to read love poems? Shouldn't he be reading poetry on war cries, words of anger, torment, hatred, and vengeance? But no, he wants to read love poems, and I wonder why. Maybe because he wants to feel warm, hunker down, plowing through snowfields. He defends his borders from a beast who has brought ill omens to his land. Where the horizon blurs in blinding light of the sun and one crosses over to another shore, like a crane forced to migrate from its native land in the grip of cruel, bloody winter. A warrior wants to read love poems, but I have stopped writing love poems, waiting for our warriors to return year after year from one season to another, eager to hear their footfalls, their knocks at our doors. Somewhere I have given up. Somewhere I have given up hope for love, as love and poetry do not guarantee the return of our warriors. I have tried all. The storms in the desert swallow them. They are swept in the gorges of the Himalayas, absorbed into the earth like snow melting from the eyes of Ukraine, but not in vain. A warrior wants to read love poems. He wants to carry them in his pockets like seeds of sunflowers, chew on them when famished, and share them with his brothers who have no one to write love poems for them. He wants to sprinkle them in journalism, stained with the blood and tears of his nation, with the hope that love will grow when conflict is over. But the nib of my pen is broken, and there is no ink left in my ink pot. A warrior wants to read love poems never written before. I sharpen my pencil in a hurry before he goes. I scribble something on his chest where his name appears, where his dog tag sits like the armor on his chest. No, you can't read my words. They are camouflaged. Love poems aren't for everyone. They must be protected from the eyes of tyrants and dictators, no matter what the cost. And I will close with, thank you. And I will close with this poem called Ominous Silence. And I feel most of these poems in this book were like self-prophecies. And although I wrote this poem last year after the election, I think you can see what this poem tells, and I have no word, and I only pray for the best for Ukraine. Poem is called Ominous Silence. How can you tell the difference between a dream and a nightmare? I woke up to see the war was finally over. I was relieved and confused. I did not know who had won and how did it all end suddenly. Did we go nuclear? What else might have led our world to annihilation? The angels and the devil were dead, and God was grieving in heaven. But you and I were still alive, still writing, documenting the accounts of the war. You were transcribing my verses, but for whom? And for what? When our world is destroyed, and those who are alive without eyes or limbs cannot read and understand what we wrote. I'm astonished. I can still write in the dark without ink, pen, and paper, with my broken fingertips, with blood flowing from my heart on the pieces of our precious planet torn apart. Every warrior who wanted to read love poems is dead. So what is the meaning of all that we did together? What is the meaning of what we are doing now? What is the meaning of what we want to do next? Please don't say the answer is in the silence and our loving hearts like a bloody battlefield. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kalpna. Such wonderful poems, and I was amazed at the inversion that you did of Aga Shahidadi's book in your second poem, My Post Office Without a Country. I think that was just brilliant. And you're able to bring all your memories of childhood and also speak from other perspectives, the perspective of Ukraine and, the love that can sustain all of us. That really was a message that came through. Thank you so much. I would like to end this session with this poem calling for solidarity, and it's called The Flood. Dawn sees a string of women in the city waiting to board the bus. Voices ripple in the dark, a roll call of names, and soon the bus rides the descending fog, following a necklace of red lights weaving into the capital. Women hold up banners, call out, call out, call out, the king and his henchmen. Spilling into avenues, they walk colorful in coats, hats, and scarves, chanting, bursting into song. Yes, we shall overcome. Sister, shine this little light of mine, yours and mine, let it shine. Spirits take wing as words burst from lips of women and men who work brutal hours and now lift sagging spirits. Courage, sisters, and the women cry back, courage and power, heat gathering in layers, the air warm with joined wills, a giant tide gradually curling into the perimeters. So I would like to thank our three poets again, Kalpna Singh-Chitnis, Megha Sood, and Zilka Joseph, for sharing your wonderful poetry with all of us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pramila. We've now completed the Northport poets and the South Asian diaspora poets. In the last half hour, if you'll turn your attention with me to the poets that have been gathered together, the writers that have been gathered together by Francine Witte, who, like any person who's really key and growing in influence and support of her fellow writers around the country and closer to home in New York, has a resume which is immediately out of date as soon as she gave it to us. But she's the author of many books of poetry. Flash fiction has been on the scene in New York City and in other parts of the country for many years. A playwright, I've seen one of her plays on East 4th Street. She's been involved in the best of the anthologies of flash fiction, including Best Small Fiction, Best Microfiction, Flash Fiction America, New York City from the Inside. Well, I published that, as well as national journals. She is best known to me and to those of us who follow the the world of editing of flash fiction online for Flash Boulevard, and her work with Lenny De La Rocca at the South Florida Poetry Journal. But you can see her as a host and organizer of many events, a participant in many events downtown New York City poetry scene and performance scene. Please welcome, with flash fiction writers, Francine Witte.
Thank you, George. And thank you, Robert Savino and the Walt Whitman Birthplace. Very lovely to be here. Very nice to hear all the other poets. I am also a poet, just so you know. But today it's all about Flash. And, you know, I don't know if you know, but George is editor. I mean, he's a publisher of Flash Boulevard. And he very nicely gave me the opportunity a few years back and said, would you like to edit this online journal? And I said, yes. And it's been really fun doing that. So thank you, George, for that opportunity. So those of you who, you know, don't really know exactly what is flash fiction and how is it different from poetry? Well, how is it different from poetry? It's sort of like, to me, it's like the difference between a hamburger and a meatball. Okay, they're just sort of the same thing, but in different forms. You know, a lot of poetic language goes into flash. It's storytelling. Flash is storytelling. Yes, I know prose poems can have stories, I know, but for our purposes, we're just going to say that I like to say that, you know, a poem is like more of a meditation in general. And so I wanted to just start with, before I have my wonderful readers go on, I just want to start with a short story, a little short piece. The very, to me, what shows off what flash fiction is the best is that very famous story by Ernest Hemingway, 6 words: for sale, baby shoes, never worn. Why is that flash? Because it evokes so much outside of the words, same way the poetry does, rather than just like little anecdote might, you know, a 300-word anecdote where you're just telling someone a story. The idea with flash is that it evokes things outside of the story that live in the white space around it. So I was always intrigued by that little story. by Ernest Hemingway, for sales, baby shoes never worn. And so here's my take on it. It's called Another Take on the Story. Maybe there had been a baby shower, and there was a registry with a pair of shoes on the list, but the baby's grandmother never checked the list, having spent the last few months in Europe. And she picked up the identical pair of shoes in a shop in Barcelona on one of her typical sprees. Or maybe they were never being they were being sold, never used, because the baby himself was such a charitable little chap and said, in baby talk, of course, "Mama, I have everything I need. Please sell my unused, never worn shoes and give the money to some unlucky baby who doesn't have the good fortune to be born to you and Pop." Or maybe still the father's mistress snuck them into his briefcase, hoping the father would find them and realize what a generous soul she is, and he would leave his selfish wife, like he was always saying he would. Or maybe the father wasn't even sure in the first place that the kid was his after all. And who the hell cares if a little brat runs around shoeless and he's just lucky not to live near a hillside? But most likely, it's exactly what you thought, and the baby actually died. Okay, so let's hear from our three readers. I have three really wonderful pillars of the flash fiction community, which is a very thriving community. And we connect on the internet mostly through Twitter, X-Twitter, Blue Sky, etc. First up, it's my good friend, Myna Chang. Myna Chang is the author of The Potential of Radio and Rain. Her flash fiction has been included in several best of anthologies, and her poetry has been recognized by SFPA's Risling Award. Find her online at mynachang.com. Myna Chang.
Thank you, Francine. It's very exciting to be here with all of you today, and I've really loved hearing all of these pieces so far. So I will jump right in. I'm going to read two micros. The first one is titled Crossroads Diner Blues, 1937. It took me many months to get the Kansas farm town voice right, so I hope you enjoy this one. It was featured earlier this year in Centaur Lit. So, Crossroads Diner Blues, 1937. Sometimes the itch is bad enough you think you can trick the devil. You know you got to step right up, bold as soda glass, run your finger across that pearled glint of devil teeth. You know you got to be quick before devil takes a bite. Blues man on the record player, he makes it sound easy. Smooth like honey and whiskey, like Old Scratch himself is holed up there at the crossroads, waiting just for you, saying, "That's right, sweet girl, devil just dying for a taste of your particular itch." But you know it ain't that easy. Might lose more than a finger, you ain't quick enough. Lion Blues man still picking that guitar with all 10 of his fingers. Still, on a hot Kansas night when the air hugs close, and the men are working late to bring in the wheat, and the other waitresses are swaying to contraband music in the back room. That's the kind of night you don't care if it's easy. The kind of night you're willing to go toe-to-toe with a man, or a husband, or a devil. The kind of night you think you might curl like tobacco smoke, etch yourself into the grooves of a record that can be played somewhere else, anywhere else. You're coming with me, ain't you, sweet girl? Gotta be quick when you're standing toe-to-toe at the crossroads. Gotta be bolder than glass. That's that one. So this next one is a cryptid story, so it's a little odd. This skews into the horror category, so I hope this doesn't gross anybody out. This ran earlier this year in Hex Literary. It's titled Wild Bill's Last Ride. Billy Jansen likes to tell a story about the night he found a monster in a pothole outside of Cactus Flats, Texas. The first thing Billy will tell you is that he used to be known as Wild Bill back in the day. Anyway, Billy says he'd stopped at the Bullwash truck stop on his way home from the slaughterhouse. His truck didn't need fuel, but he needed a hamburger steak, and he figured as long as he was there, he might as well wash the manure out of his cattle trailer. The truck stop had a couple of big bays in the back, equipped with pressure washer hoses and drainage grates. Got to get that sludge out of there sometimes, Billy says, or else it builds. It was sometime after moonfall when he met the monster. At first, he thought it was a sheen of spilled fuel glimmering under the security light. That parking lot was more pothole than pavement. But the iridescent swirl grew thicker, meatier, and then a blazing longhorn bull coalesced, charging out of the hole on hooves sharp as galvanized steel, bellowing bone-soft fury loud enough to burst Billy's eardrums. It might spoil your appetite, but if you'll listen, Billy will tell you about the wave of nausea that struck him, how he puked hamburger steak and Coca-Cola and ketchup all over the cracked asphalt, how his vomit seethed as it drained away with the soap suds and the fill. If you'll listen in the keen of the night, you might still hear the echo of the monster. You might still hear the sizzle. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Myna. I think you nailed the voice in both of those so well.
Thank you.
Really beautiful work, great imagery. And thank you for being here with us today, Myna Chang. Next up is another good friend of mine, Gary Fincke. Gary Fincke's collections of stories, poems, and essays have won the Flannery O'Connor Prize for Short Fiction, the Wheeler Prize for Poetry, and the Robert C. Jones Prize for Nonfiction Prose. He's very multi-genre. His latest splash collection is The History of the Baker's Dozen from Pelicanesis Press, 2024. He is co-editor of the annual anthology of best microfiction. So he and Meg Pokris came up with, this anthology a few years back, the best microfiction, and it features like the best microfiction that the editors have chosen. And I've had pieces from Flash Boulevard in there, and I've had pieces from SoFlo in there. So we very much appreciate your hard work on that. Gary Fincke, take it away.
Thanks, Francine. Happy to be here. I thought I would try, since I understood that all the other groups were going to read poetry, and I write in several genres. So occasionally a poem gets compressed, and sometimes a poem can open both into stories. So two of these are literally 100-word stories. Originally poems that were squeezed, and then the other two were poems that open into microfictions. The first, I think you'll be able to tell the difference just by how long it takes. Teaching English in the biology lab. Sea life charts are props for Melville, the mounted cat a visual aid for Poe. Leaves are displayed like a nod to Thoreau. Biology is frogs dissected, worms halved and pinned, the lesson of finding life in mouth scrapings. Those sophomores are looking at the muscles of pigs with awe. They are learning the networks of nerves where pleasure and pain begin. When the first new reckless driver dies, the fetuses swim in jars as if they might still be born. The skull atop the desk waits as if I can throw my voice, as if it's about to speak. This one's called The History of Silk. During the summer after 7th grade, when we were alone for an afternoon, no chance of being caught, silk was what we sought in Ted Neiman's older sister's room. We held her silk and named girls we knew who might be slipping off the slick things we touched, negligees, panties, lace-trimmed slips with straps designed to be nudged by passionate hands. Always three of us together in that bedroom, we turned alike, drawing silk things over our skin like fingertips, lifting our shirts, opening our pants in a unison of desire that ended with refolding those things exactly, replacing them in order. In late August, school about to begin, Rick Cants, while we watched, undressed and slid that silk over his head to bring himself closer to pleasure. Without speaking, Ted and I dressed too. For a few minutes, we were girls. We looked at ourselves in the mirror, our faces smooth and girlish, flushed as if rouged. When we lifted those slips, we turned away from each other. Replacing them in her drawer, we said we had been lesbians, girls who had secrets and could never tell them to anyone. When school began, we never said a word about Sylvia Needham's room. Before long, we chose new friends. 8th grade was years before any of us knew the history of silk, the way taming turned the silkworms from tan to white, the way, defenseless but unharmed, they stopped trying to escape, the way, become moths, they didn't fly, how they mated and died without once opening their pale, damp wings. This was called How My Mother Posed Me. The photographer instructs my mother to hide under the dark maroon blanket to hold her infant still. It takes time and quiet for your darling to be perfect, he says. In all of his portraits, she sees that nothing disguises the shape of the mothers, the way the cloth narrows at their heads, the taut geometry of their laps. Regardless, she lets him cover her and cradles my body through cotton. Loose threads stroke her face. She sweats throughout the lengthy shot, laboring in the darkness to aid the wonder of permanence, holding her breath to become inanimate for love. And finally, this one's called Ash Wednesday. Despite the snow, his mother insists that the neighborhood is feverish, running a temperature raised by the nearby mill. Their house keeps gathering a film of filth, jaundiced by the industrial air. The city bus drops the disappointed off at the end of the street. Because sidewalks live somewhere else, plows a total stranger, they follow the furrows left in the snow by tires, open doors, and disappear. Like his birthday, Lent has returned. It's Wednesday evenings, non-negotiable, sentenced to sermons and communion and lost television. Earlier today, the next-door Catholic girl was spotted with ashes by a priest, her forehead a neglected windowsill. Last summer, 13, he watched her body tan on the other side of the hedge of hollyhocks. From his upstairs window, the pane so small it could be called a keyhole, he stared and memorized. All winter, she has entered and exited the cars of junior and senior boys. Now, after he asks about ashes to pause her on the shoveled sidewalk, she explains how her thoughts are synonyms for sins, both venial and mortal. Yours too, she says, and though he has not been taught to distinguish, he knows that he has practiced gluttony for years and laughed about it, that he lies and swears, and sometimes, though petty, he steals. All those sins so common to his friends that they must be venial or else heaven is empty. Later, while his mother's minister starts his annual interpretation of Lent's stories, he remembers that spot of ash, certain his deepest secret is a mortal sin. Not his daily waking to lust, but his all day watching only the channel devoted to it, his body mortgaged to obedience, unable to pay down that debt. How, right now, he wishes to be a priest who overhears the mortal sins, listening and listening for one of the guilty and sorrowful to explicitly confess what is thrilling enough to damn him. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Gary. I love the imagery, the way you wrangle the words and the movement in those pieces. Very beautiful.
Thanks.
True masterful work there. Thank you for being with us today, Gary Fincke. I wanted to just mention before we go to our final reader that all of these 3 readers have been in Flash Boulevard. And if you are interested in reading more of Flash Boulevard, please, Flash Boulevard is kind of the fiction division of Poetrybay. And George is, like I said, wonderful about publishing it and all that. And please feel free to subscribe. Go to flashboulevard.com, hit subscribe. All we ask is your email, and you will get Flash Boulevard every week. What we do is feature one writer each week, maybe three or 4 stories, usually about 1,200 words. So it's a nice thing to wake up to on Saturday morning. And, it's a whole new world of language. So flashboulevard.com, hit subscribe, your email, and we won't sell it either. Right, George? That's what we're hoping. Okay. All right. Our final reader, another really good friend, Chelsea Stickle. Chelsea Stickle is the author of the flash fiction chapbooks Everything's Changing, 30 West Publishing House, 2023, and Breaking Points, Black Lawrence Press, 2021. She lives in Annapolis, MD, with her black rabbit, George. Read more at chelseastickle.com. And I have to just side note here, say that when I met Chelsea a few years ago, we were at a retreat, and then I said, this is one to watch. So Chelsea Stickle, take it away.
Thank you so much, Francine. Thank you to the organizers, and thank you to Francine for asking me to read. Ever since we met at that retreat, she has been a champion of my work, and I could not appreciate you more, Francine. So I am thrilled to read here with all these heavy hitters. It's been a week, and in this week, a couple of my stories from the past came to mind. I wrote this one in January 2021. It was originally in Craft, and it's in Everything's Changing, my chapbook. It's called I Scream, You Scream, We All Scream. There is a town at the edge of things where women hold in their screams, so they die young. High blood pressure, heart attacks, strokes, cancer. The girls watch their mothers and grandmothers and aunts play Ring Around the Rosie, ashes, ashes. They all fall into graves where no one will ever see them again. These girls grow into women who decide things will be different for them. They know what's expected of them. Perfect bodies, perfect souls. Their long hair sweeping so no one notices the bared teeth fury flash across their faces, starving their bodies and ambition until they're small enough they threaten no one except themselves. They teach each other to judge how close they are to exploding. When the shaking begins, when all that's left of them are unspoken screams, they bolt to the outskirts of town. In an abandoned field, they reclaim the bodies they've disassociated from. They raise their backs, clench their fists, and unleash what festers inside them. Holy expressions of hell, wordless desolations, cursed names, all the things they can't say at home. High-pitched, low-pitched, louder than anyone might expect their compact bodies to project. The ones who can't stay, whose skin itches with what can't be scratched away. hack off their hair and throw it down where blood poppies later emerge. They drive and drive and drive, searching for a place where they don't have to scream in a field. A place where they can be angry and imperfect, and the world doesn't fall apart because of it. So they drive from town to town, devouring gas station powdered mini donuts, slurping energy drinks like a lifeline before tossing them onto the passenger seat pile. Their mouths covered in white dust, their eyes on the road, always reaching for a place that doesn't exist. So for my last story, I thought I would read this one from Breaking Points. It was also in HAD, and actually, I was lucky enough that it got me into the Wigleaf Top 50. So this one is called If You Want It Bad Enough. Oh, I should probably say, I really love stories about women falling apart, but I got really tired of it all looking exactly the same. Like there was a period in pop culture where like it was just like Fleabag, and like every single woman looked like a version of Fleabag, and I was like, okay, but you know, it doesn't always look like that. So this story is a response to that. So if you want it bad enough, I know what damaged girls look like. The white girl wasted, half-dressed mess and 6-inch heels, fresh cigarette between her fingers. She fucks randos and might be the typhoid Mary of chlamydia, but no one cares because she's such a good time and she never complains. Then there's me, untrusting of strangers, digging chocolate chip cookie crumbs out of my cleavage because that's what happiness tastes like. Perennially alone because I'm unwilling to take the same risks as everyone else. No one gives a fuck about me. Girls like me disappear. The first shot feels like the fire I need to rebirth myself, so I choke down another, a third for good luck. Soon I'm engulfed in flames, surrounded by strangers. I forget myself, talk loud, belly laugh, nuzzle up to some guy. We dance to the next song because I claim it's my favorite. There's no dance floor, but it turns out one can be made if you want it bad enough. The room becomes a kaleidoscope of forgettable faces and splashes of color. My body is fluid in ways sober me could only fantasize about. I twist out of my winter coat and throw it in the general direction of our bar stools. That crop top I bought for this night barely covers anything, but I'm so hot and dizzy. My shoulder knocks into a nearby group like I'm trying to break into a locked room. I bounce back, unsuccessful. Beer rolls across the floor in waves. Sorry, I say. It's not enough. I offer to buy their next round. Some guy hustles me out the door. I rub my bare arms in the freezing night air. He comes back and throws my coat at me. Fine, I scream, fine. I cackle and it rattles every cell in my body. I'm coming apart at my foundation, sinking into the quicksand beneath. I struggle into my coat and peer inside the windows. People are unsure what I'm going to do next. Their apprehension travels on waves between us. The power to change their night thrums through my blood. I can feel it in my teeth, the ends of my hair. I stand up tall like a statue and grin, my bright red lipstick smeared down my chin. The people inside shudder and turn away. Can you see me now? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. Chelsea Stickle. I love the way you read. Besides your wonderful prose on the page, your reading just makes it pop, really comes to life. So I want to thank my 3 gorgeous readers, Myna Chang, Gary Fincke, and Chelsea Stickle. And thank you all for listening to some Flash, and I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you again, George. I'll turn it back to George now.
Thank you. What is the image behind you? Is that Housing Works?
Yes, it is. That's good eye there. Yeah, it's a photo that I took when I was there several years ago. And I put it up one day and everybody always comments on it as my background. So yeah.
English. Yeah, I missed that place. I'm not sure it's around anymore.
I think it might be. I think it might.
Well, anyway, thanks again, Francine. It was a fabulous group of people.
Thank you so
And
much, George.
testimony to the efficiency of words, what can be done in prose with really efficient and use of brevity and impactfulness. So Francine Witte's flash fiction writers, Pramila Venkateswaran, South Asian diaspora poets, and Bruce Johnson's poets from Northport. Bruce had to leave. He's on his way to a wedding. I want to thank you all for joining us, all of you who joined and have joined in the past and are back as guests and visitors to listen in. I do appreciate it. I have put on the chat the finale for this season next December 14th. Cleveland Poets, led by John Burroughs, who many of you will know. So actually Greater Ohio. I don't think it's strictly Cleveland. Flower of the Litter Poets. That's a book on homelessness, a poetry anthology on homelessness put together by Seattle or Portland, one of those cities up northwest, Mimi German. And Bolton, UK poets, David Morgan. It's worth mentioning that the idea for Poets Building Bridges came to me 4 years ago, before we did our first year of doing this back in 2021, I think it was, or 2020. Dave Morgan put together the first triangulation when Zoom was first starting to find its footing. And he paired a group from Bolton with some people from Tamil, part of South Asia, led by Sriram Gokul, and a couple from the United States, 3 of us from the United States. This gave me the concept. So it's to his credit, Dave Morgan, that we even have this this thing exist, this triangulation program exist as a concept. So once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. It was a fabulous show, and you kept to 1 hour and 45 minutes. I mean, partly because of the huge efficiency of the prose writers, the flash fiction prose writers. So thank you for all sticking to time and sticking with each other and hearing each other and speaking to each other in the chat room. It was a lot of fun today. You'll see this up on Facebook, on YouTube, Monday or Tuesday. On behalf of the Walt Whitman Birthplace and all of the poets and writers around the country and around the world who've been involved in this program for the past 3 years, I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll be signing off now. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.